My parents skipped my Grandpa Arthur's funeral and blamed expensive flights. I almost believed them. Then, while the pastor was still speaking and my black dress still smelled like lilies, my phone lit up with a photo from a Caribbean beach, my mother in sunglasses, my father smiling behind her. Caption, living our best life. I sat in the cemetery parking lot staring at it until another message appeared. It came from Grandpa's old phone. Sweetheart, come to my house right now? Arthur had been buried that morning, when I got there. My heart dropped. The 2 chairs were the first thing I noticed when I walked back into the chapel. Front row, left side, empty. I had placed a folded funeral program on each seat myself. Smoothing the paper with my thumb like that could make my parents appear. Linda and Richard Harper, my mother and father. The 2 people who had given me their last name and very little else. The chapel smelled like lilies, old wood, and coffee from the basement reception room. Someone's baby fussed in the back. The air conditioner clicked on and blew cold air across my ankles. I kept looking at the doors every time the hinges made a sound. Arthur would have hated that I was watching for them. He used to say, "Love is who shows up," usually while doing something small that proved it. Sitting on metal bleachers at my school softball games with sawdust still on his jeans. Waiting outside my high school in his old truck because I missed the bus. Holding Chloe the day she was born like she was made of glass and sunlight. He never made a speech about being family. He just stayed. When I was 7, my parents left me at his house with 1 pink suitcase and a stuffed rabbit missing 1 eye. I remember my mother saying it was just for a little while. Arthur didn't argue in front of me. He only carried my suitcase down the hall, opened the spare room, and set a moon-shaped nightlight on the dresser before bedtime. That light was still there 28 years later. So, when Arthur got sick, there was no question. I drove to his house after work, sorted his medicine bottles, checked his bills, made toast he barely touched, and sat beside him through old westerns with the volume too loud. I was a bookkeeper, so numbers made sense to me. Sickness didn't. Watching a strong man turn thin under a flannel blanket did not. Then Linda came back. She arrived with perfume, soft sweaters, and a voice sweet enough to fool people who didn't know her. She said she wanted to help with Daddy's affairs. Within a week. His mail went to her hands first. His bank statements disappeared from the kitchen drawer. When I offered to organize the bills, she smiled at me like I had reached for something that wasn't mine. Let his real daughter handle it. Nolan. I swallowed that sentence for Arthur. And now his real daughter's chair was empty. The pastor was talking about faithful hands when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I should have ignored it. Everyone knows you don't check your phone at a funeral, but grief makes you strange. It makes every sound feel like it might be the last piece of something falling. I slipped my hand into my pocket and tilted the screen just enough to see it. A notification. My mother had posted a photo. For 1 stupid second. I thought maybe it was an old picture of Arthur. Maybe some late, clumsy tribute. Maybe 1 paragraph about how much she loved her father, even if she couldn't make it back in time. Then the image loaded. Blue water, white sand, a drink with a little paper umbrella. My mother leaned back in a turquoise cover-up, sunglasses pushed into her hair, smiling like the world had handed her a prize. My father stood behind her with 1 hand on her shoulder, sunburned and pleased with himself. Under it were 4 words, "Living our best life." The timestamp sat under the caption like a slap. It had gone up while the first hymn was playing. My thumb froze on the glass. The chapel kept breathing around me. Someone sniffed. A program rustled. The pastor said Arthur had been a man who built things that lasted. I stared down at my parents standing on a Caribbean beach while the man who raised me waited in a casket 10 feet away. They hadn't missed the funeral because flights were expensive. They had chosen sand over soil. I locked the screen and slid the phone back into my pocket. But the picture stayed bright inside my head. My mother's smile, my father's hand. That caption sitting there for neighbors, cousins, old co-workers, anyone to see. At the graveside. I stood under a gray sky while the wind lifted the edge of my funeral program. Dirt hit the casket in soft, awful taps. I tried to pray, but all I could hear was my mother's caption. living our best life. Afterward, people hugged me in the parking lot. Mrs. Callahan pressed a casserole dish into my hands. A man I barely knew told me Arthur had fixed his porch after a storm and refused payment. I nodded. I thanked them. I did all the things a steady woman is supposed to do. Then I got into my car, shut the door, and let the casserole sit heavy in my lap. That was when my phone buzzed again. Not a notification this time. A text. The contact name made the back of my neck go cold. Grandpa Arthur. I stopped breathing for a second. His phone had been on the little table beside his bed when he died. I had watched Martin, his lawyer, put it in a drawer 2 days later with Arthur's reading glasses and pocket knife. The message was short. Sweetheart, come to my house right now. I read it once, then again, then a third time. The cemetery stretched ahead of me, quiet and wet. Fresh dirt dark over the place where we had just left him. My grandfather was buried, but his phone had just called me home. I set the casserole on the passenger seat, turned the key, and drove toward the gravel road without turning on the radio. Arthur's porch light was on when I pulled into the drive. That detail hit me before the open front door did, that warm yellow bulb over the steps, the one he always left burning when he knew I was coming, was glowing against the gray afternoon like someone had been waiting. My tires crunched over the gravel. I got out slowly, still in my funeral shoes, still holding my phone like it might bite me. Grandpa, I whispered. The word sounded wrong in the yard. Inside. The house smelled like dust, lemon cleaner, and the peppermint candies Arthur kept in a glass jar by the sink. His boots were still by the back door. His flannel jacket still hung over the chair. For half a second, my mind played a cruel trick on me, and I expected to hear him cough from the living room. Instead, I saw Martin Collins sitting at the kitchen table. He was Arthur's lawyer, though Arthur always called him the only man in town who could argue with a parking meter and win. Martin looked older than he had 2 days ago. His gray tie was loose. Arthur's old phone sat in front of him on the table. I'm sorry. Nolan, he said, standing too fast. I should have used my own phone, but he made me promise. My mouth was dry. Promise what? Martin looked down at the phone. That after the funeral. I would get you here alone. No Linda, no Richard, no relatives, just you. The air conditioner hummed from the hallway. Somewhere in the walls. The old pipes ticked. He knew I'd come if I saw his name. I said. Martin's eyes softened. He said you always came. That almost took my knees out. Then Martin reached beside his chair and lifted an old cigar box onto the table. I knew that box. Arthur used to keep loose screws in it. Little brass ones and crooked nails he insisted were still useful. My name was written across the lid in his shaky handwriting. Nolan, not Linda, not the family. Me. Martin slid it toward me. He asked me to give you this. He said you'd know what to do with what was inside. I sat down because standing suddenly felt dangerous. The lid creaked when I opened it. Inside were a blue notebook, a stack of payments and bills clipped by month, bank records, and a copy of a financial power of attorney with my mother's name on it. Linda Harper, printed clean and official, like ink could make betrayal respectable. My hands went cold. I opened the notebook first. Arthur's handwriting started strong, square and careful, the way he used to mark measurements on wood. Then, page by page, it got weaker. The lines tilted. Words ran into each other, but the meaning was clear. Linda says I spent too much this month. I don't remember spending it. Then another entry. 400 gone. Didn't buy anything but medicine. Then another. She thinks I'm too sick to count. I'm not. I pressed my palm flat over the page. Martin didn't speak. He didn't have to. The man I had buried that morning had spent his last strength leaving me a map. At my own kitchen table that night, I laid everything out in rows. What Linda had said, what Arthur had written, what the bills showed, what the bank records proved. The numbers climbed slowly at first, then faster. Medical bills were there, small and ordinary, pharmacy runs, care supplies, groceries. But the big transfers went somewhere else. Month after month, Money left Arthur's accounts and moved toward my mother, not for his care, not for his comfort. By midnight, the total sat in front of me like a loaded verdict, about $460,000. I didn't call Linda. I called Rachel Bennett. The elder law attorney Martin had written on a card when she answered the next morning. I said, "I think my mother stole from the man who raised me." Rachel was quiet for one beat. Then she said, "Don't touch anything else. Bring me copies. And from this moment on, you don't argue with her, you document." I looked at Arthur's blue notebook under the kitchen light. For once, I knew exactly how to love him back. My mother walked into the courthouse like she was attending a charity luncheon. Cream jacket, pearl earrings, soft makeup, a purse tucked under her arm like a shield. Richard came in behind her, looking smaller than usual, eyes moving from the floor to the exit sign and back again. Linda didn't look at me right away. She looked at the benches first, checking who had come to watch. Brian was there. Karen, too. A few cousins who had not called me once after Arthur died. They all sat behind my mother. Rachel leaned toward me and whispered, "Let the records do the work." So I folded my hands on the table and did exactly that. Linda's attorney started with a careful voice. He said this family had suffered a painful loss. He said caregiving was messy. He said Linda had been overwhelmed by Arthur's illness and that any confusion around money came from stress, grief, and informal family arrangements. He made it sound gentle. He made it sound human. Then Rachel stood. She did not begin with the money. She began with the funeral. She placed a printed copy of my mother's beach photo in front of the judge. Caribbean water, sunglasses, Richard's sunburned smile, my mother's caption, clear as a slap, "Living our best life." Rachel pointed to the timestamp. This was posted during Arthur Whitman's funeral. She said, after Mrs. Harper told her daughter she could not attend because travel was impossible. Linda shifted in her chair. The leather made a small squeak under her. Rachel continued. She showed the message from Arthur's old phone. She explained Martin's role. She explained that Arthur had arranged, before his death, for Nolan Harper to be brought to his house alone because he did not trust his daughter with what he had documented. My mother's face changed then, just a little. Not fear yet, irritation. Like the story was slipping out of the shape she had practiced. Her attorney objected to the funeral photo being emotional. Rachel nodded and said, "It is emotional. It is also relevant. It shows the court the first lie in a longer pattern." Then came Arthur's notebook. Rachel did not dramatize it. She did not need to. She read 3 lines in Arthur's own words. "Linda says I spent too much this month. I don't remember spending it. 400 gone. Didn't buy anything but medicine. She thinks I'm too sick to count. I'm not." The air vent clicked above us. A paper cup rolled slightly on the attorney's table before someone caught it. Then Rachel laid out the payments, bills and bank records. Not all at once. 1 month, 1 entry, 1 transfer. Arthur's medicine bill, small. Arthur's grocery bill, small. A transfer to Linda, large. Another month. Arthur's care supplies, small. Another transfer to Linda, larger. By the time Rachel reached the running total, I could feel the people behind me stop shifting. About $460,000. My mother's attorney stood again. Faster this time. He said families often reimburse each other. He said Linda had given up time. He said Arthur had always intended to help his daughter. The judge looked down at the notebook. "Do you have receipts for these reimbursements?" he asked. Linda's attorney touched his tie. "Not for every item." "Your Honor." For any substantial item, a pause. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Before the judge could continue, Linda turned in her seat and looked at me for the first time. Her eyes were wet, but not soft. Outside the courtroom, during a short recess, she tried the version of herself she thought I still wanted. She came close enough that I could smell her perfume, sweet and sharp, the same kind she wore when she showed up at Arthur's house pretending to help. "Nolan," she said, low and trembling. "Take the house." Rachel stood beside me, silent. Linda reached for my hand. "I'll give you the house. I'll give some of it back. Just stop this before it gets uglier. We can still be a family." I looked at her fingers hovering near mine. The same woman who had pulled the curtain shut on me at Arthur's house now wanted to hand me the keys like they were mercy. "No," I said. Her face hardened. "Don't be stupid. There it is," I said quietly. Back inside. Rachel presented the final chart. Arthur's words on the left, the payments and transfers on the right, the total at the bottom. Then the judge allowed me to speak. I stood with Arthur's notebook in my hands. "My grandfather did not leave me this because he wanted me to get rich," I said. "He left it because he was afraid no one would believe him. He raised me. He showed up for me every day my parents didn't. And while he was being buried." My mother posted a beach photo saying she was living her best life. Linda shot up so fast her chair struck the wall behind her. "He owed me," she snapped. "After everything I put up with, he owed me something." Her attorney grabbed her sleeve. Too late. The judge's pen stopped moving. Richard leaned away from her like guilt could splash, and I felt no joy, only a clean, hard sadness. Because there it was, not grief, not confusion, not caregiving, entitlement. Rachel turned back to the judge and said, "We request a formal order for repayment and referral for review of elder financial exploitation." Linda sat down slowly. For the first time that day, she looked at the papers instead of the people. Arthur's blue notebook lay open on the table between us, and every number on the page had finally found a voice. The order came in a plain white envelope. No thunder, no dramatic music, just my name on the front, Rachel's office stamp in the corner, and Chloe's cereal bowl still sitting in the sink while I opened it with a butter knife. Linda was ordered to repay what she had taken. The court removed her from any control connected to Arthur's estate. The matter was referred for criminal review, and once prosecutors started asking questions, Richard did exactly what I expected him to do. He stepped away from my mother like she was a burning stove. He said he didn't understand the accounts. He said Linda handled everything. He said he only went where she told him to go, that Caribbean trip. The one they had smiled through while Arthur was being buried suddenly became her idea in his version. My father had always been light luggage, easy to carry, easier to drop. Brian stopped calling. Karen sent one message about how I had made everything public, as if Linda had not posted her own cruelty in front of half the town. I didn't answer. Some doors do not need slamming. You just stop holding them open. The repayment did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces, after assets were frozen, after accounts were separated, after Linda's attorney stopped using words like misunderstanding and started using words like settlement. Rachel kept me updated, but I stopped asking every week because somewhere along the way, the money became smaller than the truth. Ethan came with me the day I went back to Arthur's house. He didn't say much in the car. He just drove with one hand on the wheel and the other wrapped around mine. Chloe sat in the back seat, kicking her sneakers against the seat and asking if Great-Grandpa Arthur's house still had the moonlight. "It does," I said. My voice almost held. The house looked tired when we pulled up. The porch steps needed paint. The gutters sagged a little. The flower beds had gone wild because nobody had been there to trim them. But the bones of it were still good. Arthur would have said that. Good bones. I climbed the steps and touched the porch rail. The wood was rough under my palm. Linda had turned that light off on me once, so I brought a new bulb. Ethan held the ladder. Chloe stood below with both hands wrapped around the little cardboard box like it was treasure. When I twisted the bulb into place and flipped the switch, warm yellow light spilled over the porch, down the steps, and onto the gravel road. Chloe clapped. I cried before I could stop myself. Not the hard crying from the funeral, not the kind that tears through your chest. This was quieter, cleaner, like something frozen had finally started to thaw. The house did not go to me. I signed it over to a local program that helps older people who have nowhere safe to stay after illness, loss, or family abandonment. The recovered money became a small fund in Arthur's name. It helped pay for rides to doctor appointments, overdue bills, groceries, and sometimes just a person to sit in a waiting room chair beside someone who had no one else. Arthur had spent his life showing up. Now his name would keep doing it. Before we left, I took Chloe into the little bedroom where the moon-shaped nightlight still sat on the dresser. She touched it with one finger. "Was this yours?" she asked. I nodded. "Did it make you less scared?" I looked back through the doorway at Ethan on the porch, at the yellow light, at the road Arthur used to watch until my car appeared. "Yes," I said, "because someone turned it on for me. I used to think family was the people who shared your name. Arthur taught me better. Family is the person who saves you a seat when everyone else forgets you exist. It is the hand on your shoulder at a school play, the porch light left on, the quiet ride home when your heart is too tired to explain itself. Linda wanted me to believe blood gave her the right to take, lie, disappear, and still be called my mother. It doesn't. A title is not love. A caption is not grief. And showing up after the money is gone is not the same as showing up when someone is afraid, sick, lonely, or dying. I don't wait for my parents anymore. I don't check the door at holidays. I don't leave empty chairs just in case they decide to become people they never were. If you've ever had to protect someone from the very family that should have protected them, you are not alone. Share your story in the comments. Hit subscribe for more stories like this. Arthur's porch light is still on. Not because I'm waiting, because now I know how to keep it burning.